How is it going, everybody? Welcome back, or maybe it's your first time. If that's the case, welcome to Trail Tales. My name is Kyle O'Grady. I am a thru hiker. I am a backpacker. I am a huge hiking nerd, and every single week on this podcast, I chat with other thru hikers and backpackers and hiking nerds about their experiences on the trail. And this episode has been a long time coming. Kelly Hayes is on the show. She has hiked the Appalachian Trail. I met her last year on the PCT, although she wasn't able to complete the whole thing, and we talk about that in this episode. She's also hiked the Florida Trail and the Pinhoti, a bunch of other stuff, I'm sure. She's so awesome. Like I said, we got to meet each other a little bit on the PCT, and we've talked quite a bit over the years, and I have so much respect for her. She's a badass hiker, and she's just a great person, and so I'm so excited that we finally got to do an episode of Trail Tales. She was on trail for like the last number of months, and so every time I would reach out, it was like, oh, let's put it off to now because I'm going to be on trail, and just, I don't know. We finally made it happen, though, and I'm so excited about it. We're going to get into it in just a second, but first, it's been a long time. I feel like it's probably only been a few episodes, but I can't remember the last time I asked you to do something for me, so that's what I'm going to do. What is he going to say, everybody? Is he going to say reviews, iTunes? Is he going to say Patreon? Is he going to say just all that stuff? Do all that stuff. But no, I really want to emphasize the reviews for this one. If you listen to this show on the regular and you appreciate it, go ahead and leave a 5-star review on whatever your podcast app of choice is. iTunes, Apple Podcasts. Can you leave reviews on Spotify? I don't even know. But if you listen on Spotify, check to see if you can. Just leave a 5-star review. I would really appreciate that. I read all of them. Well, I guess maybe not the ones on Spotify, but I don't even know. Are they on Spotify? Anyways, I would appreciate it. Let's get into it. Enough blabbing. Well, you got another hour of blabbing, but it's more interesting blabbing because Kelly's the one doing the blabbing and not me. Episode number 144 of Trail Tales with Kelly Hayes. All right, here we go. Long-awaited guest on Trail Tales. Kelly Hayes is, I was going to say is here, but we're not in the same place because that's how the internet works. But you're on the show, I guess, so you are here, and I'm very grateful. So thank you for coming on.
Heck yeah, thank you for having me. I'm so stoked to finally get to do this with you.
Yeah, I'm going to start this episode by telling a little story. It was told on the PCT videos from 2022, but I want to tell it again here before we kind of get to Kelly's introduction. So last year, I'm on the PCT, and Kelly was also on the PCT, and we're both YouTubers, so we had, chatted a little bit on Instagram, and I was having some issues at the very beginning of the trail with my foot. And I just remember Kelly and I were chatting a little bit. I think you were already out there at the time, maybe. And I was just kind of telling you, like, I guess we were both out there. Anyways, and I was telling Kelly about my foot and these issues. And I think I had said that I was potentially thinking about getting off because of it. Things were looking pretty dire. This was right at the beginning of my PCT hike. And Kelly told me that she would pray for me and my foot. And I'm not a religious person, but I really appreciated that because people don't pray. People from Vermont don't pray. And so it was just not something I hear very often or ever. And I really appreciated that. And her prayers must have worked because my foot ended up getting better. And it was awesome. And so I appreciated that, Kelly.
Oh, and, man, that makes me happy. I love that.
It was very wholesome. And it worked out. And then, of course, we got the chance to meet.
Yeah,
and,
that was cool.
But anyways, I wanted to start the episode there. Kelly Hayes, she's got some awesome content, and she's done a ton of stuff on the trail, too. And so why don't we start there? Can you just give yourself an introduction? And then we'll kind of get into like how you first learned about thru hiking and how you first got into it and all that stuff.
All right, cool. Like, what kind of introduction? Like, I'm Kelly.
Who are you? Who are you?
I?
What have you hiked?
Okay.
All that stuff.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, cool. I'm Kelly. What's up, everyone? 30 years old and from Arkansas. And I started my little backpacking journey back in, it was like 2019 when I went on my first backpacking trip. And for a while, I was just going on trips in Arkansas. And then I learned about the Appalachian Trail and was immediately hooked and was like, man, I'm going to do that. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I know I will get out there and do that. And I was in school. I had gone back to school to get a second degree in nutrition and become a registered dietitian. My first degree was in broadcast journalism, which is funny now looking back because now I do YouTube and dietetics. So all of my student debt hopefully paid off. It's not paid off yet though. Yeah. Anyway, so I started just going down the rabbit hole, researching the trail, and I said, well, the best time for me to do it would be after I graduate and finish school. But back then, I was still getting my bachelor's, and to become a dietitian, you have to get your bachelor's, then you have to get accepted into an internship, and then you have to get your master's, and then you have to pass a board exam. And so all these things needed to fall in line, fall into place for me to actually be able to get on the trail when I had planned to. And turned out everything happened exactly the way that I wanted it to. And I was able to get on the trail in 2021. And luckily, too, with, COVID and everything happening, that the trail was open. And that, because that was another kind of obstacle that may have put a damper on me going when I wanted to. But I had set my start date. It was back in 2019, I think it was 2018. And I think I was like 2 or 3 days from the day that I had set all the way back then. Wow. Because I was watching all these. Yeah, is that crazy? Like, it all just kind of worked out. Because I remember watching YouTube videos and they were like, you set a date. Don't just say you're going to do something. Like, set the date. If you have to change it later on, you can do that. But set the date so you have it on, your calendar and you can kind of plan for that. And so that's what I did. And luckily it all worked out. And then, so I did the Appalachian Trail in 2021. Crazy little story there. I don't know if we want to get into that yet.
No, I know where you're going with this. Yeah, we can get into it.
Can we get into it?
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
So we'll just...
I feel like it's a pretty, important story of your story when it comes to thru hiking,
You're right, yeah. So, okay. I start the Appalachian Trail. I think it's like April 10th I start, and I'm so excited. And I'm out there for 6 days. I've already made all these friends. It's the best time of my life. And I already know that I'm going to absolutely love this journey. Because, you go into the trail, I guess, on your first thru hike. And, of course, I'd been on backpacking trips before. I think the longest one I'd been on was 4 days. And so, you think, well, being out there for 4 days is one thing, but am I going to be able to live out there every single day for 6 months? Like, how am I going to actually like that?
Right.
And I knew after 6 days, I was like, okay, I live in the woods now, and I don't want to live anywhere else. But, and I was feeling really good. Like, I was going to CrossFit and I've always been an athlete. So I was in really good shape, and I was getting my trail legs pretty quickly and wanting to ramp up the miles already at day 6. But that morning I woke up and I had the worst pain in my abdomen, and I thought it was stomach pain. I thought it was constipated. So I was camping at mile 38 Low Gap Shelter. And if you've stayed there, that shelter's kind of off trail, and there's like a tent area, and then you have to hike all the way down, and then there's the shelter, and then up the hill is the privy. So it was like far away. So anyway, I hike all the way out to this privy. I tried to go to the bathroom. Doesn't work. I'm like, what the heck? So I hobble back over. People in the shelter, like, I looked bad. They were like, what's wrong? I don't know. My stomach hurts, and I'm going to go back into my tent and hopefully, recoup. And so at this point, everybody's up, and my trail family's kind of waiting on me, and I'm like, you guys go ahead and get going, because I got to figure this out.
Yeah.
Luckily, 2 of my friends stayed with me. And anyway, the morning goes on, the pain keeps getting worse and worse and worse, and I end up throwing up, like, just projectile vomiting everywhere. And that's when I knew at that moment, like, okay, something is very wrong, because I don't just throw up like that, you know?
Right.
Yeah, so we didn't know what it was. Some people thought it was like dehydration, but that didn't seem right because I had been drinking water. We didn't know, but we did know after a while that I needed to get out of the forest and to a road, and get to civilization. So the closest road from Low Gap Shelter is actually to go Sobo to Hogpen Gap, and it's about 4.5 miles hike. And so packed up all my stuff, and my friend Tupac, who got her trail name that day, she actually carried my backpack in the front of her, and then her backpack on the back. And this is the beginning of the trail, so everybody starts out with like a super heavy pack. That girl had to be trucking like close to 70 pounds.
Wow.
Out.
Damn.
Yes,
that's
crazy.
A good friend right there, especially
Dude,
for someone you just met a few days ago too.
Exactly. I was like, oh my gosh, like this is incredible. But she had been in the military. She was in the Navy. And I think that military just came out because she was like, okay, you need to get out. We're doing this. And I was like, yes, ma'am,
Yeah.
So yeah, that was Stephanie, aka Tupac. And then my friend Mighty Mouse, who I'd started the trail with, she went with me as well. And anyway, I got to the Gap, went to, ended up at the hospital. I actually went to like a walk-in clinic, and I was so angry because I'm sitting there like in so much pain, and they have me sitting in the waiting room. Nobody is in this building. Like, where are these people? And I finally get called back, and there's this old 80-year-old doctor, and he's like, what's going on today? And I'm like telling him my symptoms, and then Mighty Mouse is in the room with me, and I have no idea how they got on this topic, but Mighty Mouse is a history major, and she must have said something about that, and the doctor, they started small talking about history. I'm like,
man.
Hello, I'm over here like dying, please help me. And so they eventually tell me like, okay, we can't help you need to go to the ER. And I was like, oh God, please. And then, I'm also like thinking, how much is this going to cost? Like, I don't think my insurance is going to cover this. They were about to call an ambulance. I was like, whoa. We are not calling the ambulance. I will walk to the ER. And luckily, one of the nurses, like, drove me over there. She felt so bad for me. Yeah. So she drove me to the ER. And then I go check in at the ER. And, of course, you get to the ER. If you're not bleeding out, they're not taking you seriously. So I'm rolling around on the ground, literally, in so much pain. And I probably wait in that waiting room for a good hour. I watched this pregnant lady walk in and go get back right. They took her back right away. I was like, ugh. I was so angry. Anyway, they take me back, blah, blah, blah. They shoot me up with morphine right away. And this is when I knew like something was really bad, because they gave me that morphine and it helped for like 10 minutes. And I was like, oh, some relief. But then, like, the pain just came back for a vengeance. And, like, all day, it was just building and building and building. To the point where I was literally screaming at the top of my lungs and making a huge scene in this ER. And Grace will tell you, or Mighty Mouse will tell you, because she was in the room with me. And this was back when COVID was still a thing. And so, like, I was like walking out into the main lobby of the ER. I was like, somebody needs to help me. And they're like, you shouldn't be out here without a mask. And I was like, it was just like a fight all day.
Yeah.
So anyway, they take me back. They x-ray me. They CT scan me. They see something in the CT scan. So then they take me back and do an ultrasound. And the ultrasound was like the worst thing ever, because they stuck the ultrasound in a place that was a terrible place to stick an ultrasound.
Use your imagination.
Yeah, use your imagination. And so I'm in like so much pain, and they're shoving that up me. I'm like, oh my gosh, could this day get any worse? But anyway, so after the ultrasound, I went back to the room, and it was less than like 5 minutes later, a nurse runs in, and she's like, you have an ovarian cyst, an ovarian torsion that's about to erupt in your abdomen, and you're about to go into emergency surgery, and then in less than 10 minutes.
Wow.
The doctor comes in. Yeah, he's explaining to me the surgery, and then I'm on the surgical bed, like going upstairs to the OR. And so it was a very quick process after that, and I don't know what they gave me after they found that, but I was finally out of pain for like the first time all day, and I was able to call my mom and my grandma, and they were like freaking out.
Oh yeah, I bet.
My mom was like, don't let them take your ovary out. I was like, I don't care if they take my ovaries out. I'm in so much pain. And that's actually what they had to do. The cyst was about the size of an eggplant. Like it was massive.
Wow.
Or like one of those Beats audio pills.
Yeah.
And it was all like twisted around, and like my fallopian tubes were like all, and like I have pictures. It's crazy. But it was all filled with blood, and it was basically like non-salvageable. So they had to take that ovary out, and now I only have one ovary. But the doctor, he couldn't believe it. Like he came in the next day, and he's like, you're pretty lucky, because if that would have erupted on trail, like I could have gone into septic shock or something like that, because it had so much blood in the cyst. And he was like, that is the biggest cyst I've ever taken out of anybody. And he like asked for a picture with me and everything.
Oh,
and
man.
Yeah, like everybody in the hospital was like, yeah, that girl, she hiked out with this thing. They all knew who I was. It was pretty funny. But yeah, that happened. The 6th day I was on the trail.
Insane.
Right. Like,
but I know that you ended up back out there too, which is honestly even more insane to me. I remember at the time, I think it was even before we had spoken, but I heard about it, and I was like, she went back out there, and I'm going to spoil the story. She went back out and finished the damn trail too. Incredible.
Yes.
How long was it before you got back out there?
It was 3 weeks exactly, and it was the toughest 3 weeks ever, because I was in a lot of pain. I couldn't walk. Like, I got wheeled out. Like, it was so humbling, because here I was on the trail, doing double-digit miles with my backpack, and then I go have this surgery, and I went and stayed at Your Home in the Woods bed and breakfast with Paul and Bonnie for like 3 days to recover enough to get on a plane and go home. And when I got to the airport, I was like getting wheeled around on a wheelchair, and then I was like the first person to board the plane. I was like, oh, this is so terrible.
Wow.
But
yeah,
it was 3 weeks, and I got back out there, and it was tough, man. I had 3 incisions. It was laparoscopic, but I had 3 incisions right on, like, basically where your pack sits.
Yeah.
And so, those, of course, were still pretty tender and healing. So I had to really be careful, and I just took it slow. The first few weeks back on trail, I slack packed as much as I could. Luckily, it was still at the beginning where there's options for that.
Yeah, pretty accessible, I guess.
Yes. So, and I actually caught a lot of slack for that on YouTube.
Oh,
You're
my
not
God.
a real
Of course
thru
you
hiker.
did. Dude, these people in the comments, dude, if you're out there, what are you guys doing, man? Relax.
What are you doing? Like,
relax.
Sip your Mountain Dew and shut up. I'm just kidding. But seriously, like, I couldn't believe, and this is my first thru hike too, and first time like vlogging. So like, now I look at that stuff and laugh. But back then I was just so flabbergasted. Like, what are you even saying? Like, is this real life?
These people, a lot of them don't even understand that like slackbacking is very common.
On the AT, yeah.
Even regardless of like whether or not you just had this surgery and you need to like ease back into it, like
yeah.
The fact that someone would have the audacity to write something like that, especially given it's not okay no matter what, but like especially given your circumstances, I'm just like, dude, what are these people thinking, man? I don't get it.
No pass, I swear. But yeah, so I got back out there and I walked to Maine, and that's my crazy AT story.
Yeah, what a way to start. And I think it's so amazing that maybe not even, well, it is amazing, but just like, I don't know, it just really speaks to your determination that you were like, because that would be like a very reasonable thing to get off trail for. I mean, people get off trail for a lot less than that. And like, you were like, nah, dude, I'm going to do this shit. So I think that's so awesome. And I've been wanting, I remember even back when this happened, you know, it was a couple of years ago now, like I was getting like people messaging me being like, you got to have Kelly Hayes on the show. Like you got to have her tell the story. So I'm glad that we finally get to get that story on the show.
For sure.
And like super incredible. But your hiking adventures, if you will, definitely didn't stop with the AT. Because the next year, obviously, you set out on the PCT, like I said at the beginning of the episode, and we got to connect briefly there. I know that the PCT didn't go quite as well as you were hoping. Can you kind of talk about what happened there a little bit?
Yeah, so really living up to my trail name, guys. I got the trail name 9 Lives on the Appalachian Trail after that whole incident. I was like, oh yeah, that's perfect. But I don't know if that's jinxing me because then, I got on the PCT next year and man, I don't even know if I had a good day out there. Cause it just kind of started off rough. Like my sleeping pad had popped and I had diarrhea really bad one night and our flights it was a very quick turnaround, like getting to San Diego and then getting on the trail the next day. Like James and I were up for 24 hours to get to California. And then we started like the very next day, which I'm like, yeah, I'm not doing that again. I'm going to have like one down day to either just like camp and get used to the time change and all that stuff. So anyway, I was out there for 3 weeks, I think. And I got really, really sick on trail. And this is in the desert. And we're in the middle of a 70-mile stretch between Julian and Idlewild. Okay. And so I don't remember how many miles it is, but that is kind of a thick stretch within the desert. And we hiked a very dry year, so water was 20 miles apart a lot of the days. Water sources were, and I just one day woke up and was so tired. I could not get moving. And I'm always tired in the morning because that's just how I operate. But normally I'll wake up around lunchtime and I could not wake up. I took a nap on trail. I never do that. And I remember too, like my body temperature just was like I couldn't regulate it. I was either dumping sweat, super hot, or really cold. And I remember thinking, I was like, do I have a fever? And I was like, I can't have a fever. We're hiking 20 miles today. Like I've hiked 15 already. There's no way I can have a fever. But then we ended up at Mike's place, and I remember waking up that next morning, and I was like, okay, there's no question that I'm sick. Yeah. And I was still kind of trying to rationalize it. I was like, I think it's maybe just allergies because I always get bad allergies in the spring. But then James got sick, and I was like, uh-oh, what's going on here? So we did 2 20-mile days, or like 2 18-mile days, and then, or maybe it was 2 or 3 18-mile days, and then we got to Paradise Valley, and I was like, I gotta get to town. Like, I was out of food, I could barely hike, like I could barely move, and so we ended up getting a hitch in the back of a truck, and we got to Idlewild. I already had my room booked or whatever, and I just was... I was like probably the worst I've ever felt. I was so tired and just, it was such a hassle trying to get that hitch. And I remember we were trying to get food at that restaurant and it wasn't working. And I don't know. So we get there and I just take a shower and pass out. And then I wake up the next morning because we had planned to take a 0. I was like, I'm just going to go to the pharmacy and get a COVID test, and because I had never had COVID at this point before, so I went, and sure enough, we both tested positive, and for about 4 days, I was pretty sick with a fever and a cough, and just so tired. And then we were kind of like stuck because I was like, okay, well, we can't get back on trail, we can't be around people. And so we were just kind of in a really weird situation at that point.
Yeah, not a great way to start.
Yeah, it was just like, what do we do? And so we stayed 10 days in Idlewild, and of course what comes after that is San Jacinto, which is really like the first big climb on the trail. And so it was like 10 days after we had felt sick, and we didn't have any more symptoms, just tiredness. And so we're like, all right, well, it's time to hike out. And it took us 4, maybe 5 days, to get to Cabazon, which should be like 2 or 3 days realistically.
Yeah.
But we were just not moving good. We were both so tired and just still recovering. And we got to Cabazon, and we're like, I was worse than James was. I was like, I've never been so tired in my life. So anyway, long story short, we end up going home and kind of resting up for 2.5 weeks or so. And then we got back on trail, and we got back on where we had left off. At this point now, it's like May in the desert, and it wasn't the best decision. We probably should have skipped up a little bit, because we weren't moving really fast enough to be in the desert in May,
with the long water carries and stuff.
Yeah, long water carries and just coming off an illness. Most people who start in May in the desert, like, you're doing like 20 to 25 miles a day to get the heck up out of there because it's hot and miserable.
Yep.
But I went out and couldn't do that. I tried, and that's when I met Kyle.
Yeah.
That was like my worst day too, that night I met you. I think we only did like 6 miles that day.
Yeah, I remember you seemed like you're in rough shape. We like pulled up to that campsite, which that was the Mission Creek day, and like that part of the trail was not easy. It was like it was really the only time I ever remember on the PCT where the trail was kind of hard to follow. It was like quite washed out by the river there, and but anyways, yeah, we rolled up to that campsite, and like I knew you were close. I didn't know exactly where you were, and like we got there, and you and James were kind of just cowboy camped. Yeah. And it's just like, it looked like you were passed out, honestly. So like I was there for a little bit, but I didn't realize it was you. And then I think at one point I saw you like sit up or something, and I was like, oh, that's Kelly. And so we got to chat a little bit. And then the next day in Big Bear, we got to hang out a little bit. Yeah, it was Big Bear. We got to hang out a little bit, which was cool. But how much further after that did you guys go before you got off?
Man, not far. I actually had a really good day out of Big Bear. I think we did like 22, and I was like, okay, I can do this. We're gonna be okay. And then I think after that was like the hot springs.
Yeah.
We made it to the hot springs, and then it was we went to that Joshua. Did you stay at the Joshua Inn?
I don't think so.
It was like that little bar. They came and picked you up, and it was like a bar, and that was pretty much it. And they had like camping there, but we went there, and then we were just gonna go there for the day and like get some food and cool off because it was so freaking hot. And we go to get back on trail, and there's a fire. I was like, you gotta be kidding me. And so we had to stay there that night, and then the next day they had pretty much contained it. And I think, where did we made it to Cajon Pass. We made it to Cajon Pass. So it was like 350 miles I did in total. And we got there, and I don't know, like my butt was just kicked. And it's not like, I remember on the AT, it would be like, at the end of the day, my butt would be kicked, but then I would wake up the next day, like ready to go again. And it was every day my butt would get kicked. I would wake up feeling like I got my butt kicked overnight and ran over by a truck. And then like, it's just like, I kept getting worse and worse every day, like instead of stronger. And I was like, okay, there's no way that I can hike 2,650 miles in this shape that I'm in. Yeah. And so, the doctor warned me about this because when I did come home, I did actually go to my primary care physician, and they took an x-ray of my chest, and there was calcified nodules in my lungs because I guess it can do that to you, kind of like pneumonia or anything like that. And my doctor told me, she's like, because you have this, you're not going to be breathing as well, and you're just going to be pretty fatigued. And it honestly felt a lot like mono. I had mono in college, and I remember for like a good 5 or 6 months, I was just tired. Like I would go to class and I would go to basketball practice, and then I would just sleep for days. So I was just like, I can't do this. And that's when I made actually, I could get into that. So we got to, sorry, the story continues. So we got to Cajon Pass, and I was like, I can't do this. I'm so tired of the desert. I thought the heat was really getting to me. And so we came up with this plan to skip up, and we were going to skip up to the Sierras to Walker Pass and continue hiking from there and catch up with my friends Tripod and Sunshine and some people that I had known from the AT. Mm-hmm. So we make this plan. We call the Bud Farm. Did you stay there?
No, I didn't.
Okay, but you know what I'm talking about? I
don't really remember what it was, to be honest, but I remember just hearing people talk about it at the time.
Yeah, so there's this place. It's in what's that town after Cajon Pass? Wrightwood.
Yeah, maybe. Is it?
Yeah,
I think so.
I think it's Wrightwood. Well, they're like right outside of Wrightwood, the Bud Farm, and we didn't know what we were getting into, but they picked us up. It's an interesting place.
I mean, just by the name, you could kind of.
Yeah. So we get there, and things are just kind of strange. There's some interesting characters there. Everybody's very nice, but it's just like, what in the world? Like, we're already kind of flustered with the whole situation.
Yeah,
we get there, and it was just kind of weird. But they offered a shuttle to Walker Pass. So we were like, okay, we'll camp the night there, and then the next day they were going to shuttle us up there. So I'm thinking like, AT shuttles. There's some, they could pretty much like be an LLC business type of shuttle situations on the AT. They'll have like vans and, nice cars, and it's almost like a business, like an Uber or something, Mm-hmm. No, this place was quite different. So this dude had a Trailblazer with no AC, no air conditioner.
Oof.
And then he put in like a third seat, and he had his 2 daughters and his son and a dog and this other guy and him and me and James and 4 backpacks, and then a bunch of their crap because they were about to stay at Kennedy Meadows for like a couple weeks. I guess they like stay up there. And there is stuff. They're pulling 2 dirt bikes in the back.
Oh, geez.
And there's all this stuff on the roof. It was crazy. And it was like it's a 3.5 hour drive from Wrightwood to Walker Pass.
Oh, man. So you're just kind of crammed in there for
We're
a long time.
Crammed in there. James didn't even sit on a seat. It was
my God, jeez.
He was crisscross applesauce on the ground with his pack in his lap, and I was sitting behind him, and he was like using my legs as like a backrest, and then my pack was like behind me because like we're in the 3rd row of this. It was a Ford Escape, actually, I think it was, but like basically in the very back of the car, and then the dog's at my feet, and then his 2 daughters were right next to me. And it was a wild ride. And, you drive right through the Mojave Desert, and there was no air conditioner. It was a freaking trip. But we made it to Walker Pass, and we started hiking that next day. And I made it like 6 miles up the trail. And I could not breathe. And I was just like, this is dangerous at this point. Because now you're hiking into the Sierras. And not only am I putting myself at risk, I'm going to end up putting somebody else's life at risk if I have to press an SOS button and need somebody else to come get me. And I was like, this is just not smart. Like, mm-hmm. You need to just go home and, suck it up and go home. So that's what I did. It was a tough decision, but I'll never forget that day because James and I were just kind of sitting there like making this decision, and it was really tough and really crappy, and we were just really struggling with it. And local came, he was trail running, and he stopped and obviously saw like what was happening. We explained the situation and stuff, and he actually asked if he could pray for us, and
Aww.
we all kind of huddled up, and like we're all like kind of hugging each other, and he said like the most perfect prayer, everything that I needed to know, like everything I needed to hear. And it was basically like God talking through him, like telling me that it was going to be okay and that it was okay for you to go home. Because I think like, and you can probably relate to this too, like as a YouTuber and somebody who, you know, just announced this big hike and you're super excited about it, but now you have 30,000 other people really excited about it. You know, It was like, dang, I'm letting not just myself down, and James down, but I'm letting 30,000 people down too. And as much as you don't want that to be part of it, it is.
Yeah.
And that's what made the decision even that much harder. So there was a lot of, last year was really tough for me because I dealt with that. And of course, when the video came out, I got hate for it because that's what happens.
Yeah.
And it was a lot to process and deal with. And on top of all that, like I just wasn't feeling good. And I wasn't myself for a good 5 or 6 months. I was just extremely tired and couldn't really exercise like I normally did. And yeah, that was kind of how last year went for me and the PCT.
Definitely tough, yeah. I will say I did see a lot of like very supportive comments on that video too.
Yes, yes.
Even
can't forget those.
The vast majority, which I totally understand.
For sure.
How it's like, you know, I'm sure you can relate. I've talked about this before. It's like the nice ones don't always stick in your head as much as the negative ones, especially when it comes to something so personal like a thru hike.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I've just found that it's a little bit yeah, exactly, because it's like you put a lot on the line to do something like this, and it's not easy. Mm-hmm. But anyways,
and people like sometimes forget that this is my life and like our experience, and we're sharing it with the world. But people like are gonna sit here and like give me their negative opinions and basically tell me that I'm living my life in incorrect way according to their opinion. And it's like, nobody would ever walk up to somebody on the road and tell them like, you're not doing your life right. You know?
Yeah,
like,
I know.
I don't know.
People are goofs, man.
They are.
But, you know, that's what comes with
it's what comes with it, man.
Yeah, but fortunately, you know, that wasn't really the end of your hiking story, obviously. Mm-hmm. And so when did you start the Florida Trail again?
It was this year. January.
January. Okay, yeah, that makes sense actually. Yeah. And so Kelly goes out on the Florida Trail, and I gotta say, like, at the risk of sounding, I don't know, I'm sure you'll understand this, Kelly, but just for other people, it's like when you make a certain type of content, you're not really like watching other people's similar content on YouTube that much, you know. Mm-hmm. Like it's pretty rare that I'll sit down and I'll be like watching other backpacking channels and other thru hiking channels. But I sat down and over the course of your Florida Trail hike, I watched every single video and I really enjoyed them. I can't remember the last time I watched like an entire thru hike's worth of videos. Mm-hmm. And it's especially weird too, because generally speaking, when I do watch another type of like hiking content now, it's usually because I'm interested in hiking the trail that the person's filming. Mm-hmm. And I had no desire to hike the Florida Trail. I had kind of written it off. I think a lot of people have this, and I was like, it's, you know, I feel like the Florida Trail, I know there's a lot of people that love it, but I feel like it kind of has a mixed reputation, right? And so I don't even remember why I started watching it. But I was just like, oh, I'll just check this out. And then it was great. Like, I loved it so much. And I got to say, Kelly, those videos like really kind of changed my perspective on the Florida Trail. I'm not going to lie. Like, watching those videos, it was the first time that I ever caught myself, and I really did catch myself and like kind of did like a double take, I caught myself being like, oh, like maybe I would want to hike this someday. And I was like, wait a minute, what? Like, that's crazy. It's the Florida Trail. I don't want to hike the Florida. What am I talking about? But
yeah,
it really did. It just looked like so much fun. And I think you did such an amazing, and I'll let you talk about it too, obviously. But I think you just did such a good job, like highlighting the trail, and you just had such a great attitude about it. And I don't know, maybe I'm just reading too much into this, but it almost seemed like maybe after the experience that you had on the PCT, it almost seemed like you were kind of rejuvenated, and you had like a new or fresh, I'll say, perspective on through hiking. And I could just tell you were so grateful to be out there, not just at the beginning, but throughout the entire trail. And I don't know, it was just really awesome. So I would definitely recommend everybody listening, go check out Kelly's channel and watch her Florida Trail series, because it was so well done. And I just really appreciated it. And so I don't know, was I right there? Was I talking out of my ass? Like, did you feel like you did kind of have like a fresh perspective on things after the PCT and, you know, when you went out on the Florida Trail?
Dude, you hit the nail right on the head.
I was going to say, it really came across. It really did.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for watching all of them. I had a lot of fun out there. And yeah, like you said, you know, I was feeling really defeated after the PCT. And I guess I kind of had like a complex, I guess, or so, like a confidence issue, or I was just like, do I still have this in me? Was the Appalachian Trail just a fluke? Like, can I actually through hike another trail? Because I just felt so defeated after the PCT. Mm-hmm. And I will say, I don't, you know, from the videos you could see I kind of had a rough start on the Florida Trail with blisters after Big Cypress. And
that looked brutal, by the way. Like,
dude.
So that's the thing that, like, I always, and a lot of people I'm sure think of when they think of the Florida Trail, is like walking through the swamps and shit. And I remember at one point you were like, one of your friends had already seen a water moccasin, and you guys were only like a couple days in, and like, oh man, that shit freaks me out. But you trudged through it.
Dude, it was so much fun though. And like looking back, I would 100% go do Big Cypress again. Like whether I'm hiking the Florida Trail or not, like just to go on a few day backpacking trip. It's just such a different experience, and it really brings out your inner child. Like, you're just stomping through the mud, and you're not worried about things getting wet or, you know, dirty, because you are dirt and mud and wet, and it's just fun. Like, I really loved it. At the time, one of those days, that second day when I got separated from Tripod and Kitty Hawk, and I hiked 18 miles through the swamp by myself all day. And I will say at some point I was like very defeated at the end, because it is so hard to walk through that stuff. It takes a lot of energy, and it was the second day of the hike. So luckily I still had some adrenaline left, but it was running really low at the end of that day. And I was like, I hate this. Get me out of here. What am I doing? But now I look back and it's like my favorite day on trails.
Oh, really? Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, the Florida Trail I needed it. I needed that for my confidence, and just to find that love again for through hiking, because I know I loved it. I knew deep down that I could do it, but I just had to kind of prove it to myself.
Yeah. And it seems like not only did you just, you know, complete the trail and, you know, check it off, but it really seemed like you just genuinely were having so much fun too. And I think that's important, because it's like, you know, you could go out there and, you know, trying to like see like, okay, do I really have this? And you could kind of just force yourself through it, mm-hmm. and maybe not enjoy it quite as much. And it's like, okay, I did it, but like, did I really get that much out of it? And you would probably in that circumstance walk away with, you know, just as much frustration and maybe confidence issues, right. You know, than if you hadn't completed the trail. But it seemed like you just had so much fun, and it just made the videos like so awesome too, just to like see that. It was so good. And like, I think this is a little bit unrelated, but I think one thing that kind of like makes me a little bit more keen on doing the Florida Trail maybe someday is the access to town food that it seems like you had like pretty consistently. Which is honestly, like, when I think about through hiking in the future, like one of the biggest like bummers is just like the diet. Like, I'm just so sick of like hiker food, honestly, and like it just doesn't. I mean, it doesn't taste good, but it also just doesn't feel good. And like the prospect of being able to eat town food more regularly, I know that's like kind of contrary like to a lot of people. They're probably like, oh, like, it's about like being in the wilderness and stuff, and like there's some of that too on the Florida Trail, obviously. But like, I don't know, I like the idea of being able to eat like good food more consistently than you could on the PCT.
Yeah. I don't know if I'd call it good, because most of it was like gas station food.
Okay, yeah, you know, just like
was
regular.
Good. Yeah, it was good at the beginning. I was like, oh yeah, town food. Like, we'd look forward to the Dollar General or the gas station every day. But then towards the end, I was like, I cannot eat another fried piece of food from a gas station. Like, I can't eat chips anymore. I will say like that. It's like the hardest thing right now. Even as a registered dietitian, like, I know what to eat, but you eat so much trail food and then just so much junk on trail. It's like, I'm home now. I don't want anything to do with any of that. Like, I don't want to go out to eat. Like, let me just eat fresh fruits and vegetables, lean meats, like all the healthy things. So, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, that makes sense. You eat enough of anything and you're going to get sick of it. But
for sure.
I don't know. And so I feel like stereotype I kind of had about the trail was that a lot of it would kind of just be the same. But it really did seem like there was a lot of like diversity in terms of like the things you were seeing. And, you know, maybe not in like a grand, like very stark contrast way, like on the PCT, like leaving the desert and hiking up into the Sierra. It's like a very, stark contrast. And so maybe not in that way, but it really did seem like every little bit of the trail had its unique quirks. And another big thing too is like, which I didn't really quite realize. I knew there was the Florida Trail. Is it the Florida Trail Association, right?
Yeah.
And I knew there was, you know, a community around the trail. But, I mean, you guys were getting all sorts of trail magic and meeting all sorts of, like, awesome people helping out. And it really just seemed like you guys connected with a lot of people who were, like, very passionate about the trail. And I think that kind of gave me a different perspective, too, just seeing that. And it's like, okay, if there's this whole community, like kind of surrounding the trail, that's really quite strong, there must be like a reason for that, you know, like it. And so I don't know, it just really like changed my perspective, I guess. What were like, I don't know, I don't even know what to ask. Like, what were like some of your like favorite aspects, you know, generally speaking, about like the Florida Trail?
Well, like what you were saying, how it seemed like I was having so much fun. I will say this is the funnest through hike. I don't think funnest is the word, but the most fun I've ever had on a through hike and probably ever will. It was just, I ended up hiking with 9 other people. So when Tripod and I started the trail together, Tripod and Kitty Hawk and I, we didn't know if we would see people because they do a kickoff at the beginning of the year, like the first weekend, but we missed that because my birthday is January 1st, so I didn't want to start the trail that soon. And so we kind of missed that first bubble wave of hikers, and when I started getting blisters and stuff, we slowed our miles down like 15 miles a day, so we weren't like catching up with them immediately, but a little like almost halfway through the trail, we kind of started catching up with the bubble, and we ended up with a group of like 9 different people. So that made it really, really fun. And I made all these new friends, and a lot of people, like we all kind of knew each other from other trails. A bunch of us had hiked the AT in 21, and then other people had done other trails. So, and that group of 9, we basically stayed together till the end. So that was really cool getting to hike with them. So I loved that. I loved feeling like I had community out there, and it was just surprising again because, you know, the Florida Trail is not super popular. There's not a lot of people out there, and I definitely never saw me hiking with 9 other people on the Florida Trail. Yeah, there was a bubble of like 15 of us too at some point. So just going into town, like you said, there's all these towns with food and stuff, and we would all make it to town and just like take over and go to restaurants and the bar and then camp. Like a lot of the trail towns will let you kind of camp in town. They'll have a place for the Florida Trail hikers, and so that was really, really fun. And like you said, the Florida Trail community is just, it's like a small town feel because it's a smaller trail, but the people who are involved are really involved and they take a lot of pride in that trail. And so one of my favorite times on trail was when we went to Billy Goat Day, which is Billy Goat's birthday celebration. He's hiked like over 50,000 miles of trail in his lifetime.
Wow.
Yeah, crazy. So I got to meet him and talk to him, and they basically just put on this event for hikers, and it's kind of like trail days. Everybody kind of just finds their way there, and Florida Trail Angels just pick people up, and everybody just lands there, and there was food, and just got to meet a bunch of cool people and camp out there a couple days, and yeah, that was really sweet.
Yeah.
And then too, like you were saying, my other favorite thing was how the Florida Trail, like there was a lot of variety in the trail. So like every day was just so different. And like you said, it wasn't just like this crazy difference, you know, but one day you're hiking through a swamp, one day you're on a road, then you're in this palm forest, and then you're, you know, one day we were hiking through the marshes where you could see out, you know, to our right, you know, was the Gulf of Mexico, and then you end up on the beach. So it was just super cool. Like when we got to the end, we got to, I forget the name of that town, but Panama City Beach was 20 minutes from us. So we took a 0 at the beach.
Nice.
And had like spring break 2023. I got to relive my like 21st birthday in college on Panama City Beach.
That's so awesome.
And it was so sick. I loved it. So yeah, there's so much to love about the Florida Trail, and like you said, it's not everybody's cup of tea, but I think you just get out there and embrace it, and you know, don't set your expectations super high. You know, and just like have fun. It's a great trail. It really is.
That's so cool to hear. So I would definitely encourage anyone who's kind of written the Florida Trail off to go and watch some of Kelly's videos, and you might just find that it changes your mind.
Give it a chance.
I was living in Greenville, South Carolina for a few months when you were out there and when you were posting the videos, and like, and you know, you're doing one every day or every 2 days, you know, kind of, you know, that mix up, and like, there's so many times where I would like finish working for the day, and then I lived right across the street from a cookout, and I would go over to cookout and I would get a Reese's milkshake, and I would come back and I would sit on my bed, I would turn on the TV, and I would eat this milkshake. I say eat because like the cookout milkshakes are like basically just ice cream. I would have this milkshake, and I would just watch Kelly crush it on the Florida Trail. And I did that so many times.
That's amazing.
So just talking about this brings me back to those very specific
the
memories.
Good times in life.
Yeah. Oh man, it was great.
That's awesome.
Anyways, you weren't done after the Florida Trail. No, you went over to the Pinhoti Trail. And I really don't know much about the Pinhoti. I'm not going to lie. I don't know. I haven't gotten around to watching those videos yet, but I'm definitely going to. Yeah, it's one of those trails that I'm very curious about, because I know it's got like some shelters, and like that kind of makes me curious. Like trails that aren't the AT that still have shelters. I know it's not like the whole thing, and it's also just like Alabama. I know parts of it in Georgia too, but it's like you don't really think of Alabama as like a hiking state, right? But I know it's got some mountains. So I don't know, like what was it like going from the Florida Trail? I know you had a little bit of time between them. Going from the Florida Trail, I guess, and then getting on the Pinhoti, like, such a open-ended question. Yeah. I usually try to be more specific, but I don't even know where to start with the Pinhoti. Like, just what was it like, you know?
Yeah. So, like, after the Florida Trail, I was feeling better than ever. I just feel like I crushed the Florida Trail at the end. Like I did a 50-mile day, and at the end we were doing like 30-mile days consistently, and I had my trail legs, and I was like, man, I am just ready to keep hiking. And the Pinhoti was a really good option because it was kind of just like, you know, a connector to the Florida Trail, and eventually I want to connect all my footsteps and do the entire Eastern Continental Trail. So I was like, this helps that. It's a trail I've never been on, and it's kind of a perfect little in-between of the Appalachian Trail and then the Florida Trail.
Okay,
because,
interesting. I've never heard it put like that before.
Yeah, because like the Florida Trail is super flat. Like there's no elevation. And then the AT is very, very not flat.
Yeah.
But the Pinhoti Trail, it has a little bit of both. And I always like to say like it's a mini AT out on the Pinhoti Trail.
Okay.
It could be like the AT's little brother because there is elevation. There are some very rocky areas. There's some bigger climbs. There's grand views. There's woods. But then there's also flat sections and road walk, which is similar to the Florida Trail. So it was a good mix of both. And it was really, I think going from the Florida Trail, if I was going to get like hop on the AT, for example, which I did go and actually hike some of the Smokies, you have your trail legs, but you don't have your trail lungs. You know, those climbs were kicking my butt. Even though, like, I had hiked already 1,100 miles, like, the AT, the Florida Trail doesn't necessarily prepare you for climbing like that.
Yeah.
But going on the Pinhoti, it was so cruisy to me. Like, the climbs were just the perfect length and amount to where I wasn't super exhausted at the end of every day. Like we were hitting 20s and 25s pretty consistently the whole trail because we were on a time crunch. And I felt like it was just the perfect trail to follow up on the Florida Trail with. And I felt really strong out there, and I was really enjoying the climbing because I had missed that. So I didn't realize how much I missed that after doing the Florida Trail.
Yeah.
But it was a really pretty trail, man. Like I would say the Alabama section of the trail was just breathtaking. All the trail is so well maintained. There's some really beautiful waterfalls and overlooks and views. And like I said, it's the perfect just kind of challenge, like level of challenge out there as far as the hiking goes. I really loved the Pinhoti, and it again is a smaller trail, a smaller community of people, but those who work on the trail and are involved in Trail Angels of the Pinhoti are just so incredibly kind and nice, kind of like the Florida Trail. And it was cool to meet people in that community and be able to share that trail with other people because, again, it's not a very popular trail compared to a lot of the other ones that people are doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely on my list.
Yeah, you got to do it.
Yeah, I definitely want to check it out, and so is the Florida Trail. I think I'm going to start with just like a section of the Florida Trail. Okay. I think it'd be actually, and sorry to go back to the Florida Trail, but another quite obvious but cool thing about the Florida Trail is like it's one of the only trails in the U.S. that you're gonna hike in the winter, right?
Yes.
And so there's not really that many options, you know, from December through I don't know exactly when you want to get off there. I don't know, March or whatever, but yeah, that's kind of a benefit of it too, and probably a big reason I would imagine that a lot of people do it just because it's the only one you really can do that time of year.
For sure.
So that's another cool thing too. Well, anyways, Kelly, like I said, I appreciated those videos so much, and I'm excited to go watch the Pinhoti ones. We're getting to the end of the episode here, so I think it's story time. Although this whole episode's been story time, which has been great. Yeah, it is called Trail Tales after all, but I guess the designated end of episode story. And just to give a little insight for everybody, I've mentioned this on some other episodes, but whenever I have a content creator on, or someone who's posts publicly quite a bit about their hikes and has a following and stuff, I always give them an additional challenge, not only to just come up with a story for the end, but to also try to come up with one that they haven't talked about too much on other podcasts or, on their content and stuff. And so I extended that challenge to Kelly, as I always do. And so did you have a chance to come up with one that maybe you haven't talked about too much?
I did, and I don't think I've ever told this story anywhere.
Trail Tale exclusive, folks.
Exclusive. Yeah, so of course my story is going to be a poop story from
Perfect.
my... That's the best I could come up with. But this story takes place in my very first backpacking trip. So my first backpacking trip was on the Ozark Highlands Trail. And I think with a lot of people's first backpacking trip, mistakes were made. And the first one being that I did this section of trail late May in Arkansas. And anybody from the South or from Arkansas that knows, that is not when you want to be hiking. That's when hiking season is ending. And I knew before I even stepped a foot on that trail, I stepped out and took one look at it, and I was like, yep, I'm going to be covered in poison ivy from head to toe because the trail was already overgrown and there's bugs out or whatever. But I didn't care because this was my first trip, and I was so excited just to be out there. And I think we were out there like 4 days, 3 nights, and we did close to 40 miles, I want to say. We did a nice little section, and it was beautiful, and I had the time of my life, and I was just, happy to be there. But anyway, so the trail, or the section that we were doing, ended in Ozone, Arkansas. And in Ozone, there is this famous place called the Oark Cafe. And I think it's the oldest general store in the state of Arkansas. I could be wrong.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, it's a really cool little place, historical place, and they're really well known for their fresh pies and their burgers and just like their food, And this was my first little sneak peek of hiker hunger. Like, I'd only been out there for 4 days, but I was hungry.
It kicks in. It kicks in real quick, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I was like, man, nothing sounds better than a freaking burger and fries and a piece of pie and a Dr. Pepper. And I ordered all that stuff. And I sit down, and I'm already like a super fast eater, but this had to be like a PR for me because I ate that food. It was there, and then it was gone. And the people I was with was like, that was impressive. Like, I can't believe that you just ate all that food that fast. And it was so good, and I loved it. And so, anyway, we finished up the food, and I rode out there with my friend Mackenzie, and she was driving us back to Conway. And it's about, 45 minutes to an hour, because we're out in the middle of nowhere, Arkansas. And it's about 45 minutes back to I-40 and the Hillbilly Hideout, which is like the gas station right before you get on the interstate. Mm-hmm. And so we leave the restaurant, and we're driving for probably about 15 minutes, and I was like, uh-oh. It hit me, and I was like, oh gosh, this is not good. I was like, Mackenzie, we have a problem. And we're out in the middle of absolutely nowhere. And so, there's nothing. And back then, I thought I always had to go to the bathroom in a toilet. I hadn't been feralized like I am now. So I was like, oh, we got to find a bathroom. So we pull a U-turn, and I'm like about to poop my pants. And Mackenzie's like speeding down the mountain, and we get to this campsite, and I run in there and just absolutely destroy this campground bathroom. And yeah, that's when I learned a very valuable lesson that day. And one, basically don't eat that fast, that much grease and food after, because you have that when you get into town.
Oh, it's hard to resist.
It's hard to resist, but I know now, if I go into town after I've been out in the woods for a few days, I'm not going to go super hard on some food because I know it's going to destroy my stomach, especially if I know that a trail angel is shuttling us somewhere. We have a long drive somewhere. I'm going to go kind of, easy on it. But I learned that lesson that day, and I was
takes a lot of discipline. I respect that, honestly.
It does, but I know myself and my stomach, and that's one thing I know about myself. But yeah, that was the end of my first backpacking trip.
Well, at least it didn't dissuade you. It's been a while since it's been a while since we've had a good poop story on here. So,
oh heck yeah.
So thank you, Kelly. Where can people go check out your channel and your Instagram and all that good stuff?
Let's see. What is my YouTube channel? Kelly Hayes Hikes. That is where I'll post all my through hikes and stuff.
And there's no E in Hayes, by the way.
There's no E in Hayes. Gosh, Kyle.
I made that mistake.
You did make that mistake. Everybody makes that mistake. It's okay. And then my Instagram, I'll post on there too. It's Kelly Hayes 23. And then I do have a Patreon. If you like my content, you want to support me, I post stuff on there. And I do kind of some like behind the scenes stuff and have like a little video series of stuff on Patreon that doesn't make it on my public YouTube channel. So I'll post day hikes and kind of what I'm doing behind the scenes and also like updates and stuff. So if you're interested in that, you can join there. And, yeah, that's pretty much it. I have TikTok, but I don't ever really post anything on there.
TikTok.
Yeah, I know.
Go follow her, everybody. I'll have a link to that stuff. Not the TikTok, though, I guess, in the show notes. And yeah. Kelly, thank you so much for it's been a long time coming. We've been trying to get this together for a little while now, and I've wanted to have you on for a long time. So I appreciate it. And that's going to do it. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Woohoo!